When I'll do anything, I'll do whatever it takes to...
Throughout the game's history, Call of Duty Mobile has had a small handful of what I like to call meme weapons. These are weapons that were added solely to be an attempt at humor by the devs, and they're either statistically horrendous or are only useful in extremely niche scenarios, requiring you to play in unconventional ways. Call of Duty Mobile's very first meme weapon, the Chicom, yes that's how it's actually pronounced, fell into the former category. It was part of the original batch of weapons added during the game's release, and it was easily the worst SMG in the game. It was a burst SMG that couldn't even one burst, resulting in a weapon with slow time to kill while being harder to use than fully automatics. The definition of high skill, no reward. It stayed this way for a good few years until the devs decided to give it a series of buffs. Obviously, it took a while for the Chicom to reach a remotely usable state, but with this season's buff in particular, I think it's a very strong SMG even though not enough people seem to be talking about it. So allow me to change that, as I'll be speaking in defense of the Chicom. But first, I'm going to start by talking about the buff it received this season. Many people saw the 1 damage buff in the second damage phase, and immediately wrote it off as being completely useless.
1 extra damage in the second damage phase, that's not gonna do anything.
This is pretty understandable since 1 extra damage doesn't usually do that much and most people aren't math wizards unlike me. But once you take a closer look, you'll realize that this is a massive change for the weapon. See, the Chicom deals 30% extra damage to anywhere above the legs, so when you take this into account, you'll notice that the Chicom will now deal 33.8 damage to the body, which is a 3-shot kill, meaning that it can now 1 burst in the second damage phase, when previously it was not possible without headshots. And the 1 burst time to kill is very impressive at 150 milliseconds. This is time to kill that not even the majority of meta weapons can compete with, as the only ones that can kill faster than it are the Odin, but even then just barely, and the CX-9 with the 12-round mag. And thanks to the damage buff, the Chicom can 1 burst all the way up to 24 meters, which is the longest out of all of the burst SMGs. And if you can somehow land both shots to the head, you will have a near instant 2-tap time to kill of 75 milliseconds. Beyond this range, the Chicom will take more than 1 burst to kill, but the time to kill is still not that bad for an SMG at 290 milliseconds up to 30 meters, and 365 milliseconds anywhere beyond that. It's not amazing when you compare it to the other meta weapons, but it is definitely not the worst, so you're not entirely useless at range. Speaking of range, the Chicom is surprisingly effective at longer ranges. Its recoil is incredibly low, to the point where you hardly have to pull down as you're able to always recenter in between bursts. The Chicom also has top tier BSA, which makes boosting it any further completely pointless. In fact, you can use a negative BSA build and still have more than enough to take most ranges in standard multiplayer. So even though your long range time to kill is not crazy fast, you will realistically achieve this time to kill more consistently, since you aren't missing quite as much. When it comes to mobility, the Chicom is quite competitive, being in line with a lot of the aggressive SMGs, so you won't face any issues when it comes to keeping pace with the other meta flex weapons. If anything, you'll get around the map quite a bit faster. The Chicom also has an ADS time of around 230 milliseconds, which is just fast enough for you to react quickly and make use of its phenomenal close range time to kill. Some of you might be thinking at this point, okay, but why not use a CX-9 burst? It has faster time to kill without needing any headshots and can be built to have the second fastest sprint speed in the game. Isn't that just flat out better?
Aren't we forgetting one teensy-weensy but ever so crucial little tiny detail?
I need more bullets! I need more bullets! I need more bullets! I need more bullets!
See, the CX-9 might seem stronger on paper, but it is severely held back by the fact it has a mag size for ants. This limits your playmaking potential as you can't reliably take more than 1 enemy at a time, since you get caught having to reload. The Chicom has no such problem, as it has a little over 3 times the mag size at 39. For a weapon that takes 3 shots to kill, this results in some very competitive kills per mag, And even if you do need to reload, the reload times aren't slow either, so it'll be quite rare for you to find a situation in which you run out of ammo, making it a more practical option compared to the CX-9 burst for most players. But if you've watched any of my previous videos, you know that every weapon has to have some kind of downside, and the Chicom has two of them. The first one is the leg damage multiplier. This is because outside of the initial damage phase, landing just a single leg shot is enough to increase your shots to kill. Even if you so much as land one leg shot, you will no longer be able to one burst in the second damage phase, and beyond that, your time to kill gets even slower. So if you have a thing for looking at someone else's legs, or feet, no kink shaming here, this is not the gun for you unless you can somehow quit the foot fetish. The second downside is the universal drawback of every burst fire weapon, the burst delay. Now on the Chicom, it is not the worst since the burst delay is actually slightly shorter than the fire interval of the Odin, but it is still enough to make it more demanding in terms of user's precision. This is because your time to kill goes up immensely for every additional burst you require, making it a lot more punishing if you can't fully connect your burst, which happens fairly often since none of us have 100% accuracy, unless you have a really good gaming chair. So after all of that leaves us with the question, is the Chicom actually meta now?
Well, sorta kinda.
See, the Chicom is easily the most reliable burst fire weapon in the game, as it has none of the problems that the other alternatives have to put up with. The Pharaoh has abysmal recoil, which makes it really hard to use outside of close quarters. The KSP-45 is the closest thing to the Chicom statistically, and while it does have some pretty impressive mobility, it also has less range and a slower overall fire rate, resulting in a slower time to kill, which just makes it a weaker option in general. The Striker 45 burst is both the M16 and the Swordfish have slower mobility and handling, along with longer burst delays, so it is a lot harder to utilize their burst time to kills. And the 6.9 burst is held back by its puny mag size as previously mentioned, along with having less effective range than the Chicom. Although given the Chicom's burst fire nature, it is a lot harder for the average player to get consistent value out of it, so they're better off with sticking to fully automatics. But if you have the aim for it, you're looking at a weapon that is phenomenal up close due to its incredibly fast time to kill, up to 24 meters, along with solid mobility and handling, while still being able to fight back at longer ranges due to how accurate it is, making it truly a high risk, high reward weapon. Building the Chicom is very simple. We start with the monolithic suppressor and OWC marksman to max out that one burst range, YKM combat sock for faster ADS time, rubberized grip tape for recoil reduction since the BSA is so good that the penalty is basically non-existent, and an optic of preference for better visibility, which is actually very useful on a precision demanding weapon such as this one. Now if you don't mind the iron sights, you can drop the optic, which will give you quite a few more options. You can use the 51 round extended mag, which will give you incredibly high kills per mag at the cost of some mobility, RTC laser 1mW for better hipfire spread, or the operator foregrip for even less vertical recoil, although this will come at the cost of slower ADS time. And that is my defense for the Chicom. This is arguably one of the bigger weapon glow-ups we've seen in a while, going from an okayish SMG to an upper tier option that can compete with the current meta, assuming you have decent aim. It is effectively a more practical version of the CX-9 burst, as you aren't hindered by the small mag size, while still being extremely lethal. But that's just my experience from using the weapon, so what do you guys think about the Chicom? Has this video convinced you to give it a try? And for those who have tried it, do you think the Chicom is actually good now? Or perhaps you could still use a couple more buffs? Be sure to let me know in the comments. And if you found the video helpful, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe. But until then, I'll be seeing you in the next one. Bye bye.